We are in downtown St. Louis, one of 79 neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis. This is near where it all began, at least for the European settlers, in February of 1764. The Mississippi River is just to our left. This is named Laclede's Landing. We'll be using our stars on the St. Louis Walk of Fame for illustration. St. Louis was founded by Pierre Laclede, a French fur trader, and his stepson, Auguste Chouteau, whose street name we call Chouteau. This is why we still have a few birthday cakes around the city from 2014, when St. Louis turned 250. These are just a few examples. There were 250 of them in historical locations. Some were auctioned off. Some have been moved. $250th birthday cake right here on this corner. Here's one of the birthday cakes right here in front of the mansion. There's her 250-year birthday cake. And it's got a picture of Annie Malone there. '14. St. Louis.
Conclude your visit to the Gateway City. We hope you enjoy the attraction.
St. Louis turned 250. 2014. A really cool one, Browns and Cardinals, here at the site of the old Sportsman's Park. And here's the other side of it. This is the Payne Court building. It's now the Payne Court Lofts. This is the Feather building, built in 1882. They manufactured feather mattresses there. And after that, wagon wheel grease and then motor oil. This is the Traders building. It was built in the 1850s. They blended and stored whiskey here, and it was probably raided as part of the St. Louis whiskey ring. And they raised money for Ulysses Grant's re-election campaign. It may have been hidden from him, but his Attorney General and Secretary of the Treasury helped break it up and prosecute it. It's now the Trader Lofts. This building was built in 1885, and the Wax Museum opened in 1983. This is Raider Place, built in 1874. This is where the Missouri Hotel was, where the first Missouri legislature met here in 1820, and the first two Missouri senators were chosen here. One was David Barton, who secured his victory. The other was Thomas Hart Benton, who won by 1 vote. Representative Daniel Rawls was on his deathbed and had to be carried down from his room to vote for him. It was the last vote he ever cast. He passed away shortly after. Rawls County, Missouri is named after him. It's a couple hours away from here. Also, the first Missouri governor was inaugurated here. The Missouri Hotel was owned by Major Thomas Biddle, a hero during the War of 1812. In 1831, he was killed in a duel on Bloody Island, which was an unregulated sandbar in the middle of the Mississippi River. His wife, Ann Biddle, donated a lot of land, including where Visitation Academy originally was, and the Shrine of St. Joseph in Columbus Square, which we're not too far from. That's where the only Vatican-sanctioned miracle in the Midwest occurred. Those are a couple examples. This is also where the old spaghetti factory is. It started in 1977. Behind that is the Christian Pepper Tobacco building, built in 1901. It's now the Pepper Lofts. This is the 600 block of First Street. This is where the Switzer Licorice building was. This is the 700 block of First Street. This was First Street Ironworks. It was built in 1881 for the Buck Stove and Range Company. More recently, the Trainwreck Saloon was here. This is the Muddy Water Building, built 1881. The exterior was renovated in the 1990s. Right through there you can see the Martin Luther King Bridge, which opened in 1951. This is the 800 block of First Street, and this is the Cherrick Building, built in 1890. To the left of it was the Bronson Hide Company building that was demolished. That building right there that was Sundecker's was built about 1914. It starts the 900 block of First Street. Beyond that is where Mississippi Nights was. I'll give you just a few examples. So forgive me, there's no way I can name them all. Chuck Berry, Nirvana, The Police, Sheryl Crow, AC/DC, Melissa Etheridge, The Ramones, The Urge, who are from St. Louis. It was demolished for that casino parking lot. This is the Schoellhorn Albrecht building, the oldest one, built by the 1840s at least, before the street was graded, which was in 1842. This is the Morgan Landing building, built in 1905. This is the Levy House, built in 1900. The Eagle Packet Company operated here. They sold riverboat passenger service. Planet Hollywood was in here from 1997 to 2006, a celebrity-owned movie-themed restaurant. It's really beautiful down here in the summertime with the flowers. That's the Cast Iron Building, built in 1873. This is the Old Judge Coffee Building, built in 1884. That's the Hoffman Brothers Produce Building that was built in 1883. That's where Betty Grable worked in the summer. She's from St. Louis. The #1 pinup girl from World War II, with her $1 million legs. Her mother's maiden name was Hoffman. It's now the Hoffman Lofts. That's the Greeley Building, built in 1881. It was a dry grocery store. They didn't sell liquor there. That's the Cutlery Building, built in 1882. It was once owned by Henry Shaw, who gave us Tower Grove Park and the Botanical Garden. And that's the Witt Hardware Building, which was built in 1905. That company was founded in 1849. And we've come to the Eads Bridge, a National Historic Landmark. It's the first real structure to be made of steel. It's an architectural and engineering marvel. It was completed in 1874 before the Brooklyn Bridge, and a lot of principles used to build it were used on the Brooklyn Bridge. They walked an elephant across from St. Louis to Illinois when it opened because legend had it elephants are skeptical of stability. It was designed by James Buchanan Eads, who knew the river currents really well from salvaging wrecks. I filmed the fireworks from here this 4th of July with the arch in the background. Somewhere down here living near the Eads Bridge was W.C. Handy. He was homeless at the time. He's the father of the blues. And he wrote the St. Louis Blues, which is played at all of our hockey team's games. The Gateway Arch is the tallest monument in the United States. It's 630 feet tall and 630 feet wide. It was completed on October 28, 1965, and opened to the public in 1967. We are the gateway to the West. Down that way is the Poplar Street Bridge. It was renamed the Congressman William Clay Bridge, but no one here calls it that. It'll always be the Poplar, just like Riverport Amphitheater. Past that is the MacArthur Railroad Bridge that was part of Route 66. There's a statue of Lewis and Clark on the riverfront with their dog Seaman. They were commissioned to explore west by President Thomas Jefferson in 1804. William Clark lived here where the arch grounds are. Right in this area here was Bloody Island. It went for almost a mile. It was a sandbar that started appearing in the 1790s. That's where Thomas Hart Benton killed Charles Lucas, and he regretted it for the rest of his life, and whose father, Charles Lucas's father, was an opponent of his for the Senate. Major Thomas Biddle and Congressman Spencer Pettis killed each other, and Abraham Lincoln almost had a duel with James Shields, but they called it off. They actually became friends after. James Shields is the only person to be a senator of 3 different states: Illinois, Minnesota, and Missouri. Robert E. Lee, who was an engineer before the Civil War, actually devised a system to attach Bloody Island to Illinois and keep it from blocking the harbor. Not only did the founders Laclede and Chouteau and William Clark live here on the arch grounds, but then Robert E. Lee and also William Beaumont, the father of gastric physiology. He lived here as well. This is the Basilica of St. Louis, the King of France, also known as the Old Cathedral. When St. Louis was founded in 1764, Laclede and Chouteau set aside land for the Catholic Church. This church was established at least by 1770, but you can go back further if you want to count a priest in a tent. This building was completed in 1834 and is the first cathedral west of the Mississippi River. Land for the Old Courthouse was donated by Auguste Chouteau and Judge John Baptiste Charles Lucas's father. It's where the Dred Scott cases were before it went to the Supreme Court, in a decision that led to the Civil War. This is a statue of Dred and Harriet Scott. Sadly, they did sell slaves at the Old Courthouse. Louis Brandeis was admitted to the Missouri bar here at the Old Courthouse. He ended up becoming the first Jewish Supreme Court justice. Joseph Pulitzer bought the Post-Dispatch newspaper here at an auction in 1878. Just past the Old Courthouse is where the Planter's House Hotel was from 1841 to 1891. Guests here included Abraham Lincoln, Jefferson Davis, Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, Ulysses Grant, Buffalo Bill Cody, and Charles Dickens. It's also where bartender Jerry Thomas created Planter's Punch by mixing rum, lemon juice, and orange juice. He's the father of American mixology. In 1861 here, Nathaniel Lyon and Francis Preston Blair Jr. met with Confederates and rejected their offer. Lyon ended up becoming the first Union general killed in the Civil War. Frank Blair was a big supporter of Abraham Lincoln, and he has a statue in Forest Park. This is 4th and Walnut. This is where the Southern Hotel was. It was built in the 1850s. Guests here included Jesse James, Mark Twain, Adolphus Busch, Ulysses Grant, and Teddy Roosevelt. The owner was Robert Campbell, whose house on Locust is a museum. This caught fire in 1877 and several people died. Joseph Pulitzer was living here at the time, and he was here at the night of the fire. Phelim O'Toole, a hero firefighter, saved at least 12 more people. He tragically died in 1880 when a fire extinguisher exploded. This is Broadway here, about where Elm was. Elm no longer exists. You can see the Old Courthouse on the left edge. It's also where Tony Faust's Oyster House was, which they fought the fire from. Tony Faust's son married Adolphus Busch's daughter. The Busch-Faust mansion is in the Central West End and now owned by the McCloskeys. Also under this garage is where Pontiac is buried. He started a rebellion in 1763, which led King George's series of proposals, including certain taxes, which led to the Revolutionary War. So this is 4th and Walnut again here. Also in this area stood Fort San Carlos in 1780. The Battle of St. Louis was part of the Revolutionary War, and the St. Louisans repelled the Brits. Down here on 4th Street is the site where the first hospital west of the Mississippi River was. It was named Melanphy Hospital after John Melanphy, who donated the land, and he was also Ann Biddle's father. And this is the Tums Complex. Tums were invented here in St. Louis in 1928, and every single one over $1 billion a year are made right here. The International Fur Exchange building was built in 1919. It was a modern connection to our fur trading past. It now houses the Drury Hotel and Carmine's Steakhouse. Inside is a statue of the Lewis and Clark expedition, including Sacagawea. This is the Gateway Tower. It opened in 1967, the same year as the Arch. It's where KMOX Radio and KMOV News Channel 4 were, which were both part of CBS, until recently. 4 KMOX Cardinals announcers won Ford Frick Awards for broadcasting. Harry Carey, Joe Garagiola, Jack Buck, and Bob Costas. And one other Ford Frick Award winner worked for CBS, Tim McCarver. In the 1970s, Regis Philbin hosted Saturday Night in St. Louis here. The Scott's Hotel was on this site long ago, where Abraham Lincoln once slept. Where the Hyatt is here, which was formerly the Adams Park Hotel, was where the Merchants Exchange Building was from 1875 to 1957. The 1876 Democratic Convention was here, where Samuel Tilden was nominated. It was the first convention west of the Mississippi River and was the first of 5 in St. Louis. Tilden won the popular vote and lost by 1 electoral vote to Rutherford B. Hayes. This is 4th and Pine. Just down on the left a little is where Martin Wilkes Heron owned a saloon. He was born in St. Louis in 1850, and he invented Southern Comfort in New Orleans. It was originally called Cuffs and Buttons. When John Wilkes Booth assassinated President Lincoln, he started going by his initials, M.W. Heron. His name and signature are on every bottle, created by a St. Louisan. That's the Pennywell Hotel just to the right of this building at 4th and Olive, which is a parking garage, is where Harry Knight's brokerage firm was. Charles Lindbergh met with him and Harold Bixby and secured $15,000 in funding for his transatlantic flight from New York to Paris. Albert Bond Lambert, who our airport is named after, and Earl Thompson were also among other backers. They lived across from each other in the Central West End. He named his plane the Spirit of St. Louis to honor his friends in St. Louis. He also met with Harold Bixby here. He was the head of the St. Louis Chamber of Commerce here at this security building, built in 1890. That small building on the left was built in 1896 and home of the Mississippi Valley Trust Company. David Francis was a director and had financed the 1904 World's Fair. He was previously mayor of St. Louis and then governor of Missouri, the only man to do so. Also in this area, Samuel Clemens, also known as Mark Twain, set type for the St. Louis Evening newspaper in 1853. These are the Gentry's Landing apartments. This is where the rooftop bar is at the Ballpark Hilton. Awesome views from there. Right in this area on Broadway, Elizabeth Keckley lived. She was a seamstress and in 1855 bought her and her son's freedom. She moved to Washington, D.C. and worked for the Lincolns at the White House. Unfortunately, her son was killed in the Civil War. She's depicted in the movie Lincoln, in which Daniel Day-Lewis won the Academy Award for portraying Lincoln. Also around that time, Karl Weimar was in St. Louis. He was a German-American painter, painting Western landscapes and interactions between Europeans and Native Americans. He painted 4 murals that are in the Old Courthouse Rotunda. Here's the fountain in Keener Plaza. And the Frankie Muse Freeman statue. She was a civil rights attorney for 6 decades, and she started the Citizens Commission on Civil Rights. Behind the Salvation Army Tree of Lights here in Keener Plaza is Chestnut Street, and this is where the first Missouri School for the Blind was, and it's where Braille was first taught in the United States, right here in St. Louis. Dr. Simon Pollock brought it from Europe in the 1850s. This garage here is where William Tecumseh Sherman was head of a railroad in 1861. When the Civil War started, he became a Union general. He was brutal but well respected. He led the March to the Sea and burned Atlanta. Parts of the movie Gone with the Wind was during this. And he was commanding general of the Army after Ulysses Grant. Across from it, here at Broadway and Locust, is the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, which started in 1914, and the Economy Museum. This is the Metropolitan Square building, aside from the Arch, the tallest building in St. Louis. It's 593 feet. It was designed by H.O.K., Helmuth, Obata, and Kassabaum. All 3 are graduates of Washington University in St. Louis School of Architecture. They also designed the next tallest, the AT&T building at 588 feet. And the next tallest as well, the Old Courthouse at 557 feet. It was completed in the year 2000. This is the Southwestern Bell building. This is News Channel 5, our affiliate of NBC. And that's the Bank of America building right there. You can see the ATM and the tower. And here's some sights from City Garden Sculpture Park, right in the heart of downtown. City Garden Sculpture Park. There's the That's the Civil Courts building, whose top is modeled after a mausoleum in Turkey, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world. It has 32 pillars. This is Peabody Plaza. This is the Wainwright Building, the first modern skyscraper, built in 1891 and still standing, built for height with a steel frame. Louis Sullivan is the father of skyscrapers. This is the Laclede Gas Building. This is Webster University downtown. Here's the Schnucks downtown. U.S. Custom House and Old Post Office, a National Historic Landmark. That's the Chemical Building down there on the right. Nestle Purina was Ralston Purina, founded by William Danforth in 1894. We have the largest pet parade in the world the week before Mardi Gras. They owned the Blues from 1977 to 1983 and named the old arena the Checkerdome at that time. St. Mary of Victories is the second oldest Catholic church in St. Louis after the Old Cathedral. It started in 1843. That's Game 6 Honky Tonk Joint. That's the Broadway Oyster Bar. That's Emo's, classic St. Louis style pizza. That's BB's Jazz, Blues, and Soup. The field house was built in 1845. It's a National Historic Landmark. It was the home of Roswell Field, a lawyer for Dred Scott. His son Eugene Field was a children's writer. And this is also a museum. Now we're at Busch Stadium. The Cardinals have 11 World Series, more than anyone else except the Yankees. The Cardinals have many stars on the Walk of Fame. I won't show you all of those right now. Many have statues and everything else. We'll keep this section brief this time around. Two St. Louis football Cardinals who played here in downtown at the Old Stadium were Jackie Smith and Dan Deerdorf. Here's the Fire Engine House, number 2. Here's the Carnahan Courthouse and the Justice Center. That's St. Louis University School of Law. The Globe building was a railroad building, then had the Globe Democrat newspaper, which it's named for. That's the St. Patrick Center that helps the homeless. That's the United Way of Greater St. Louis. There's the Post-Dispatch building. Here's the movie theater on Washington Avenue. And this is the National Blues Museum. In this area, Hiram Revels was a preacher at 7th and Washington in the 1840s and 50s here in St. Louis. He became the first African-American senator from Mississippi. Here's the YMCA. And I'll also mention Charles Valentine Riley, an entomologist who saved the French wine industry during the Great French Wine Blight in the 1860s and 70s. He was working downtown right around here on Locust Street, ironically. His wife was from here. A pest had wiped out 40% of the French vineyards. He found a rootstock that was resistant to this pest, and they sent it to Europe from St. Louis and other parts of Missouri. This is 555 Washington Avenue. That's the Stiefel building. That's the U.S. Bank building right through there. This is the Missouri Athletic Club, founded in 1903. This building opened in 1916. It was designed by William Ittner, a St. Louisan. Auguste Busch helped fund it, an exclusive club. Members have included Charles Lindbergh, Stan Musial, Harry Truman, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Jack Buck, Alan Shepard, the astronaut. Bill Bradley, a 2-time NBA champion and gold medalist, used to play basketball here. He became a senator from New Jersey. And it's where Harry Blackmun was living when he was nominated to the Supreme Court by President Richard Nixon. Eddie O'Hare, who was divorced in 1927, moved to Chicago and was a lawyer who worked with Al Capone. And it was right here at the Missouri Athletic Club that a St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter set up a meeting between O'Hare and the IRS, where O'Hare handed over financial records in 1930 that led to Capone's arrest and conviction. He was murdered in 1939 by Capone loyalists. His son is Busch O'Hare, a World War II hero who in 1942 became the war's first flying ace after attacking a formation of bombers and shooting down 5. He was awarded a Medal of Honor by Franklin Roosevelt. He was killed in 1943, and Chicago's O'Hare Airport is named after him. So Chicago's airport is named after a St. Louisan. Busch O'Hare, he never lived in Chicago. And here's the dome at America's Center. The football team started play here in 1995. Kurt Warner won 2 NFC championship games here and a Super Bowl. The Pope was here in 1999. Over 104,000 people, the largest indoor gathering ever. We've had U2, the Rolling Stones, the Backstreet Boys, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Garth Brooks, and so on. The 2022 WWE Royal Rumble. The 2021 Olympic Gymnastics Trials. Simone Biles won the women's trials. That's the Four Seasons Hotel. And the Horseshoe Casino by Caesars. Sculptor Harry Weber got his star in 2023. He did the Lewis and Clark statue, the Dred Scott statue, the Jack Buck, the smaller Stan Musial, and the Stiefel Bull and Bear that we saw on this tour. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Thanks, everyone. If you want to see a short video on the arch or some of the things you can get around to on the Metrolink, you can click on these. Thanks again so much.